friends and brothers. This is Justin Jones with Masonic Improvement, joined this evening with my good friend, dear brother, and co-host of the year, Dennis Yates. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing awesome. It's even better that we're going to talk a little bit of esoteric nonsense today. I say nonsense because you know there's always going to be those that think that lodge consists of fish fries and fundraisers and then there's going to be others that believe that there's a little bit. So today is the little bit more.
A little bit more. I agree.
the
Yes.
the little bit more. However, now that being said, I would like to put this disclaimer in there. It's something that I ended my White Rabbit article this
Mm,
month with,
a good name.
and yes, yes, and I ended the article this month uh, stating that no matter where you are, you're right exactly where you need to be at this very moment. So don't feel good or bad about how much you know or how little you know. It's okay
Hmm, I like that. Um,
because no matter how deep or how shallow your Masonic journey is right at this moment, that's where you're meant to be. And you have only one way to go from there, and that's up.
I love that. It's a very good way of thinking that that it's kind of like the Hermetic principle. You know, when you are ready, a teacher, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, right? When you're not ready, it's not going to happen. It's kind of the same mentality. You can extrapolate that. Like you're where you're supposed to be in your life at this time, and you can, of course, you can affect change. We've talked about this, kind of the whole secret mentality, right? Where the vibrations you put out in the universe affect you directly, even if you don't believe that. But the fact is that you're where you're supposed to be. Now, that may be, you could say, well, you're where you're supposed to be based off the decisions you made and the vibrations you put out, the energy you put out into the universe, but that's still exactly where you are supposed to be. You're not
Yep.
ready. You've moved past a lot of things. You're not ready for some things,
Yeah.
but you're where you're supposed to be. And it's
Yeah,
based
because
off
it's
everything.
all, yes, it's based off of all your previous experiences plus the knowledge gained, and then that creates your current existence.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's very plausible that you are always exactly where you need to be.
And you mentioned earlier that we're going to talk about something that's kind of a small piece of Freemasonry. And the thing is, we always talk about how Freemasonry has lots of kind of aspects to it. You could say you have the fraternal aspect. You could say you have the charitable aspect, the ritualistic aspect, but you also have the esoteric aspect. And what's really wild and kind of shameful, but it makes sense if you think about it. The esoteric aspect, and when I say esoteric, I'm not talking about learning the questions and answers. I'm talking about like I actually study esoteric concepts. That is a really small fraction of the membership, which is unfortunate because the esoteric concepts, that rabbit hole goes deeper and is more satisfying than any of the other aspects of Freemasonry. Much deeper. And in fact, I think a lot of it is designed to feed into this part of Freemasonry. The ritual is designed to feed into this because anybody with any kind of like fleeting understanding of anything esoteric is going to go through these degrees and be like, that's, huh, I wonder why that's like that. Because that reminds me of X. And then they go down this rabbit hole. So long story short, I enjoyed these things a lot. And I hope we could do more of these in the future because this is a really small subset of the fraternity, but I would even wager that there's more esoteric practitioners that are not Masons than actually are Masons, simply because of some of the dogma that that we have in many of our lodges, especially in the South, right? In Jesus' name I pray, amen. Right. So it's really they kind of look side to side and maybe put their tarot cards in their pocket. Like, okay, this is maybe not the place for this. So this is good. This is good that we can do this. And there's nothing. I'm like, I'm Christian, so don't misunderstand where I'm coming from with this. But we are kind of dogmatic in our practices.
Right. Well, and an interesting thing. Did you look at any of the charts on the Grand Secretary's communication this year, this month?
No,
So
no.
so some of the charts that Zach Haston put together. Um, this year, the number one um, attendee at Grand Lodge, the number one group was the 0 to 4 years in Masonry group. And then the number two group was the 4 to 8 years, which happened to be the masters, wardens, secretaries.
Mhm.
But the most attendees were the non-voting members. Um, Again, of course, you've got your lodges and stuff like that, and they create a huge number of votes. But as far as individual voters and individuals, um, the non-voters were there. So that tells me that it's a younger population. Um,
That trend will probably continue. I expect.
right, right, and we've talked about this before, and I have definitely talked about it a lot because I truly believe it that the younger men are coming in because they're looking for, well, you discussed this years ago. They're looking for that. Oh goodness, you're
It's
gonna have
too
to.
early in the show for that crap,
It's
dude.
too early in the show for that. They're looking for that rite of passage, of course, but they're also looking for an understanding of enlightenment because it's not something that people grow up with in today's age. The church is not as strong of a it doesn't have as much of a stronghold on the American family that it once had.
No.
And while Texas is one of the few areas where baby Jesus is in every house, just about, um, it's still, in today's day and age, they may have baby Jesus in the house, but nobody's ever talked about him. So it it's more of a symbol than anything. So it's just another symbol that they're trying to figure out, and they're coming into our lodges trying to understand um, just life in general and where they fit into this world when it comes to that type of thing. And not that we're supposed to be clergy or anything like that, but our whole pursuit is supposed to be enlightenment. We're going to talk about the pillars here in a little bit, and of course, we're going to tip into Kabbalah a little bit, and
Probably a lot of things.
yeah, and ultimately, that's what that is the journey towards enlightenment, emanation.
Hmm.
You know, creation started from top down to us, but our journey is bottom up, and so our journey is towards emanation, and so
uh,
people without knowing it are looking for how to get there.
yeah, I agree. We were talking about esoteric, how important esoteric concepts were on more of our lives like a month or two ago. And one of the brothers on the live, and not calling anybody out because it's not what I'm doing, but he's like, "What is really the significance?" I looked into it. I don't really see it, man. And it really caused me to pause because I find it interesting myself. But what is the significance of it? And I was thinking about it, and I believe the study of esoterics is, and there's a reason that universally across the world there is such a commonality with esoteric concepts. And that's because it represents your soul's journey. And that is the purpose of our soul. And this there's this idea like, well, the purpose of life is to go to heaven. The purpose of life is to die, right? And go to heaven. But that's just saying the purpose of life is to not mess up so bad that I have a good afterlife. And I don't think that's accurate. I think the purpose of life is to bring your soul closer to God. And and how will you do that? Um, I don't know that there's really a I don't know that there's really like a reward system, so to speak. Like, oh, you were like the Dalai Lama. I don't know that that means like, well, congratulations, you get like a mansion or something. I don't even know that I really believe in like a heaven until you do achieve oneness with God. And I don't know if that is accomplishable in one lifetime, to be honest. And so I'm seeing a whole lot of like, burn that witch kind of thing. But I think that's the purpose. I think there is multiple souls or maybe just one universal soul. And the goal is to reincarnate and gain experiences. But ultimately, the reason that there's this commonality is because no matter where you are in this world, you can find the rabbit trail that will lead you, if you follow it, ultimately to that emanation you're talking about, to that oneness. And the thing is, it's so elusive intentionally that very few, if anybody, if anyone actually reaches it. But it's there, and that's the purpose of it. Because when you have reached that point, you understand you understand everything. Like to be honest, if you were to like just like, hey, download everything about Kabbalah and tarot and alchemy and astrology and whatever else into your head and give me full understanding of all the concepts.
Buddhism, Hinduism.
Yeah, but if you
Yeah.
understand all these things, you understand the mind of God.
Yeah.
Because all these things, it's just like math, kind of like physics. And physics is the math of God, right? Math is universal. Math, now, do we understand everything about math? No. But there's certain things like if I take the formula for projectile motion and do it here on Earth, that same formula works on the moon, it works on Pluto, it works anywhere. So this is like it's almost like a program. It's universal and you can plug and play that anywhere. It's the same thing with these concepts. Like you can plug and play them anywhere and they apply. And when you see a commonality like that, it speaks to something to me of something divine. There's something divine behind it. Because political parties rise and fall, religions rise and fall, countries rise and fall. The face of the earth changes, but these
But
universal
all
concepts are
within
still
the
there.
but the face of the earth changes all within the construct of God. Because it's natural, it's the natural laws in motion that create that change.
Exactly. Even
And
even
and it
that. Yes.
evolves. Yes. So now I I want to back up a little bit. You kept
We
going.
start talking about pillars.
I know you started going so fast that
I'm sorry.
you didn't give me a chance to step in. I truly believe with everything in my being that the soul is the spark of God coupled with your intellect, and that
Mhm.
creates your soul.
Yeah.
Otherwise you would be one with God already. So the your intellect creates that individualism of your own soul. If you don't have that individualism, that ego, if you don't have that separation, then you're one with God. Because the soul is the spirit, right? So it's your spirit. So if you don't have that that separation of self, then you're one with God. So
Yeah.
I
I
truly
agree.
believe that your soul is your the spark of God coupled with your intellect. So I do believe that our task on earth is to build ourselves intellectually so that we can understand while we're on earth because the goal isn't to have this separation and then together, separation and together.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about reincarnation, which I'm not sure I believe in or not, but if you think about it, it's separation and then you're one with God. It's separation and then you're one with God.
Mm-hmm.
So the goal is to always be one with God, right? To where you become good enough, you become better in this life so that the next life you're rewarded with a little bit better spirit, a little bit better circumstances.
You're farming karma basically.
You're right. You're basically yes, and so eventually it gets to a point to where you're just one with God, even on earth,
Mm-hmm.
to where you're so you've built yourself up to that.
A really interesting analogy to what you were talking about, and we've discussed this before, so I feel comfortable talking about it. We've discussed the concept of rites of passage, right? And commonalities with those rites of passage is a period of separation, and often not talking about anything specific because this is in history books. Often the candidate is blindfolded or somewise impaired, right? That intellect you're talking about is the equivalent of that hoodwink as you're going through those rites, right? Because you are being you don't see, you don't understand, you can't see what's going on. It's the same thing that intellect in our life blinds us from the true reality of what we are, right? It blinds us from our past experiences that we haven't experienced in this lifetime, right? This is a new experience to be had anew, and we're separated from that from who we once were. And then when it's over, the goal is I want to be taken back to that. I want to be taken back and reunited. It's just like you're talking about. We're going back and being reunited and being recognized as a the whatever they called, like the group of the Pythagorean cult or Mithras or whatever they called each other in these ancient times. I'm going through this rite of passage blindfolded, right? I have this intellect that, or this ego might even be a better term. I have this ego that is blinding me from reality, right? So it's very interesting that you say that. It's like the micro and the macrocosm, I think.
Well, so I was thinking two different things. At first, I was thinking when you started talking about separation and um, separating yourself from your previous life or whatever, I started thinking about purgatory. So now, also at the same time, I was thinking about in some uh, different elements of Freemasonry, there's what's called a chamber of reflection,
Mhm.
and you are separated from your friends. You're separate, but you're not where you're wanting to go. You're not to the promised land at this point, and you're meant to deal with only yourself and your transgressions in this world, in this moment, and the the negative thoughts and emotions that you have about yourself, um, it, which is almost like purgatory, right? To where you're separated from your past life and you're in this purgatory and you're being tormented with the thought that you're going to get to the promised land afterwards, right?
Mhm.
So I started thinking about that, and it's pretty interesting. This rite of passage can be applied in so many different schools of thought. But then I had this completely different thought, and and it had to do with Plato's cave, um, where there's this experiment where they have all these people in a cave, and everything's dark and black and they can't see anything, and they grow accustomed to not having light at all. And then they're introduced to this little bit of light back behind them that creates some shadows, and they're and then they have this, let's say, like a shadow of a bird, like finger puppets, whatever.
Mhm.
And that's their reality, is they see that bird, right? And that's their reality, but it's the shadow of a bird. It's not the reality of the bird.
The
And
projection of reality.
right, it's a projection of reality. And then they take them into the real world and let them go to experience the real world. And
Mhm.
reality is completely different from what their mind constructed when they were in total darkness.
Yeah.
And then going back, once they're enlightened, they're going back to try to enlighten the others that are in that cave. And because they haven't experienced it, they can't comprehend that construct,
Yeah.
because all they can see is the shadow. They can't see the bird. All they
Yeah.
can
You
see is
sound
the
crazy.
shadow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's like the Hermetic principle, the universe is mental, right? And what we experience is a projection of that. It's like nothing's really. It's also with
And
the
that's
3D universe
exact
theory.
and
Yeah.
that's exactly what I was thinking when I learned about that with Plato's cave,
Mhm.
is that, and that's all part of the Plato's Republic, if anybody wants to dig a
That's
little bit deeper.
that's a.
That's a deep read.
If you thought Pike was
Yeah.
complicated,
Yes. Yes,
but it's
that's
a
a
good
good one.
read. I do I have
In
a copy of it actually?
in fact, what we ought to do,
Was it
um
Republic or Politic?
Republic, Plato's Republic. When when we finish the Kabbalion by the three initiates, we ought to probably do something like that. Do either short stories or a short, um, lessons from Plato or something like that. We need to do some stuff like that in our inner
Classic
circle.
stuff. I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, just build ourselves up. I
I
think that's some good stuff.
I wanted to touch real quick, and we're going to rewind a little bit. Um, we're talking about like we're going to talk specifically about Freemasonry right now because everybody knows we have 3 degrees, right? Um, Going from this same kind of approach, right? But this idea like you live a life and then you come back to your divinity and kind of reflect and grow from that, and then go back out, learn a bit more. It's the same thing with the degrees because you go in, you experience something totally new. You don't know what to expect. No, regardless how many times regardless, because there's way more than 3 degrees in Freemasonry. But anytime you go through a degree, you really don't know what to expect. You think you do from your past
And
experiences,
there's
but you
way
don't.
more in those degrees,
Yeah,
those 3 degrees of Freemasonry, that people just have no idea.
yeah. But that's the idea. You go in, you have an experience, and when you come back, you're expected to reflect on those lessons before you go back in and receive more. It's the same I almost wonder, I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe I've given some people too much credit at one point, but always almost wonder if that was like, I don't know. I doubt it was intentional. I think this is
Somebody had to think of it.
no, I think it's natural because of the nature of things. And I don't think anyone's like, well, if we are being reincarnated and this is where we're doing, we should do this in life too. I think it's just one of those things where as above, so below, basically. Like that.
I think that there's so many different um, faiths out there that have so many different practices that emulate the same type of stuff that we do in Freemasonry,
Mhm.
that it wasn't that they consciously thought that, hey, we're going to do this. I think they just did it because that's what they knew. That's what
Going
they
back to
knew
these
of
universal things we were
spiritual.
talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when you're dealing with spiritual matters, this is how you learn those spiritual lessons.
Hmm.
That kind of a thing, probably.
Man. Not the direction we thought we were going, but it's interesting, isn't it?
It's still good stuff. Still good stuff. Hopefully, the listeners are still listening, and they'll be able to get to our meat and potatoes. I tell you what, it's a lot
This is the
better
meat and
than
potatoes. What are you talking about?
I know, right?
It's like I had a
It's a
full
lot
course meal
better than
before
the
the fourth course.
crap I listened to today. I was going well. I didn't even listen to it. I was going to listen to a podcast, and it was going to be a good one too. The title of it looked like it was going to be very good.
What was it?
But I sat there and listened to this guy just jabbering on while he was waiting for people to join his live show. And for 10 minutes, over 10 minutes, I drove from one place to the other, never got to hear a word of esoteric knowledge that I was looking for. And it's like, you know what? F this. I am not coming back to that podcast ever.
Well, you got me hooked on White Rabbit like years ago, and so I listen to them like every
Oh,
week.
the whole rabbit.
The whole rabbit, yeah. The whole rabbit. I'm sorry,
Yes,
not the
the
white
whole rabbit.
rabbit. That's your thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole rabbit. That's a good podcast. If anyone likes esoteric stuff, it's kind of
Yeah.
it's an acquired taste. At first, I was like, okay, these guys are just too much. But after a while,
Bunch of freaking goofs. Yeah.
they are. Well, I listened to some of the older ones, and those are really hard to listen to. But
I
that was
know.
kind of before they had their personality, and yeah,
Right.
they're sitting there hitting the bong on the podcast. It's like, okay,
I
this is
know. I know.
not really what I'm into, but
Yeah, they're still microdosing, but they're just not doing it as bad in the
it's more
later years.
professional. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you can understand them a little bit.
But there's some very interesting concepts, and they go into some very interesting stuff. So shout out, I guess. But yeah, this is good, and I wanted to say that this will get some hate. I think there's two comments that I see often, sometimes on the live, sometimes just in the comments. And there's this idea that you can't improve without God, which is okay if you say so. And then there's another mentality that you Freemasonry is evil because we sit and we call other people brother, and we share prayers with people that are not of the same faith, right? And I would say if you are locked in this um like this zealous mentality, like
Do you
your
even
way
know
is
what
the
a
only right
prayer
way.
is if you're worried about what faith somebody is? I mean,
No.
that's your one-on-one with God. But
Well, you see all the time where you have like an atheist and some Christian preacher, and they're like, "Can I pray with you?" And they're like, "Oh, they're praying together. That's great. That's fine." But if you're praying with a Muslim or something, oh man, you guys are you're all going to hell. That kind of thing. Um, I just feel like they really don't understand. Not that I'm an expert, but I'm still learning. But I don't think they really understand what Jesus was about, right? Because when you're trying to sow division and hate, Jesus didn't call war, right? He didn't call to war. He didn't call to like destroy the non-believers or anything like that. I mean, he was. I once knew somebody,
did
and
Jesus create a church?
no, no, but I once knew
Just
somebody,
saying.
and they asked to trade seats with me because they didn't want to sit by someone, and I was like, well, why do you not want to sit with her? And he's like, I don't agree with her lifestyle as a Christian. And I was like, what would Jesus have done? Right? Would Jesus be like, ew, Jesus hung out with the worst of us, right?
Yeah.
He would already been sitting there. And so it
And
like
Jesus would
Christianity
have
has
sought
become
them out.
yeah, Christianity has become elitist. That's what it is. Like you people that accuse Freemasonry of being elitist need to really reevaluate because the churches are way more. I mean, have you seen videos like the super churches? Like that's not Christianity. That's not Jesus. That's not God. That's humans right there. That's humanity. That's worshiping other humans at that point. And
That's
so
humanity running amok.
don't point a finger at us when we are getting along with people of different faiths and we are approving ourselves while you're over there so worried about your appearances. because I don't think you're about Jesus at that point, right? You're about maintaining a facade, right? Where if you're not one of us, you're going to hell. So join us and donate your money and time and things like that. I'm just putting that out there.
Those are strong words. Those are strong words. And you know, to some degree, I think you're right. But then again, like I stated at the beginning, just like with Freemasonry, I think that people are where they are because of what they know, and sad to say, sometimes it's what they don't want to know.
I agree.
They shelter
People,
themselves so that they are ignorant, so that they can continue on doing the things that they do.
well, growth requires a certain amount of discomfort, and people are naturally opposed to any kind of discomfort, right? And so if I am faced with a new reality that would bring discomfort to me, a lot of, or if a person is exposed to that reality, more often than you would think, which sounds odd to me because I would me personally, I would immediately investigate and embrace it if it made sense. But a lot of people would retract away, right? This is new, this is different, this is not what I was raised, this is not what I was taught. They fear like retribution, like divine retribution. And I mean, my loving God is going to strike me down if I don't, if I don't, if I don't accept what I was raised with, which kind of makes you like, okay, well, you said, it's your loving divine God, but he's going to send
Yeah.
you to hell for forever, right? And so,
My God is an awesome God.
yeah.
He
And
reigns.
I would also say, I'm not trying to bash on Christianity here, but if your sole purpose for going to church and singing those songs and praising God is because you don't want to burn in hell,
I think the
eternal life,
reward
like it's
is
being
is I
described.
think the reward is what I believe,
What's that?
which is that you become one with God to where you lose your ego and your all form of self, and just become one with God. And
Hmm.
that way you don't have any physical, any other form of reality that's going to conflict with just being in the presence of God.
I think you're right. I think it's something more like that. I think this whole concept of streets of gold and things like that is either like a misunderstood allegory
Oh
from the
yeah, and
ego, or it's
spending a
just something
lifetime
to
worshiping God. And
or just something to trick stupid people from the Middle Ages, like gold roads. Oh, no, man, they're gold. They don't,
give
you
me your money
understand
so you
gold.
can
Yeah.
too share in that gold, bro. That I gotta
It's the same people
I've
that
gotta
thinking it's the same people that think raising minimum wage makes everybody richer, right? It's like, oh, if the
right,
roads are made
right.
of gold, we're all filthy rich. No, there's gold everywhere. It has no value now. It's the
What
same
are
thing.
those? What are those called? Where you buy into
The
the
timeshares,
apart timeshare? I got
timeshare.
a
I knew where you were
timeshare for
going.
you. If
Yeah,
you like
exactly.
gold streets, if you like mansions, I got a timeshare for you.
Is that not what it is? It's like a pyramid scheme. It's like a
That's so
pyramid scheme.
bad.
Like,
It's a
hey, you
Ponzi
come you
scheme.
come here and worship every Sunday, and you'll get a mansion with like a gold driveway and a gold Lamborghini with gold toilets. All you gotta do is come every day for the rest of your life and bring a friend and have them bring a friend and have them bring a friend. We got to grow this church, right?
Oh, and you got to pay 10% as you go.
And pay 10%, exactly. But you'll be
Yes,
rich when you
before
die.
taxes.
When you die.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
yes.
I
Anyways, okay. So now we've
and
we've
I
beaten
may
that
be
horse to death. Now let's move on to actual. Well, it's all Freemasonry because we're talking as free, independent thinking men, uh, capable of having independent thoughts, and and though it became a little bit of an echo chamber in that instance, I like it when we can debate a little bit and have different thoughts on the same things. So let's move into this and see if we can come up with some different thoughts on the same things. Even if we do agree on stuff, let's try to figure out other things that might come into play that we're not talking about.
okay.
So let's we're starting with the entrance into the fraternity, the pillars. You know, when you go into King Solomon's temple, the first thing you pass through is the brazen pillars. uh, what are your first thoughts and don't give me your complete rundown. Just give me your first thoughts when you think about the pillars.
Solomon's Temple.
What?
King Solomon's Temple. You
A
said my
little
first
more
thoughts.
elaborate than that.
I'm trying not. I know I've read it a few
Concrete.
times, so I'm trying not to.
Brazen.
Um, there is it's hard to say. Like my thoughts now after I've studied things, or like my initial thoughts as like as a newbie to the fraternity. Like where you want me to go with this?
Well, I my first thought is the gateway.
Hmm.
That's the gateway, right? And what is it the gateway to? I mean, there's so many different ways that you can go about this in when you're thinking about.
It's interesting you say that because you have two pillars, right? There's a Hebrew symbol. It's shaped more like a Stonehenge, but you got a Hebrew symbol with these two pillars, and it's kind of the same mentality. Like it's you have a gate, a fence, and what do fences do? What do gates do? They keep things out, right, and keep things in. And so you're when you go through a gate, you're entering like a transitional area. You're going from something that is being excluded into something that is trying to be included. It's separation.
Okay.
Is that good without
So
like overrunning it?
no, that's pretty good. Um, have you ever have you seen that movie, the Never Ending Story,
A long time ago.
with
I was
Trey
very
Huell or
disappointed. It
whatever his name was?
was only
Yeah.
like an hour long. It was not never ending.
And at the end at the end of the movie, when he's going to the this gateway, they had the cherubs up top on top of it with the laser eyes that shoot down and try to stop them from passing
I
through.
don't remember any of that.
So anyways, so when I think about a gateway, that's kind of what's in my mind, is something like that. Um, just from past experiences, that's one of the things that really made an impression on me, was the nothingness killing the world, and them trying to save it, but they had to get through this one point. Um, but in Freemasonry, that gateway represents us passing from the terrestrial to the celestial.
Yeah, I can see that. Well, it's represented in the lodge room.
Well, it's definitely represented in the lodge room on a macro and micro. Um, but even on the pillars themselves represent that, because if you look at the spheres on top of each pillar, one is the terrestrial and one is the celestial globes, and it's very emblematical of what's happening right there. Is that when you stand in between those pillars? So here's another interesting thing. So you're right. You're leaving one point. You're not into the next point. You're in between, in a point of in between. So think about that. You're one realm behind you, the terrestrial, and one realm in front of you, the celestial. And you're in between those other two pillars. You're the third pillar in the tree of life. That's where the path begins, in the
Yeah.
tree of life. That's that's where that's where you connect and create the tree of life, is when you're leaving. And so this is foreshadowing to another point in our degree structure. This is foreshadowing, because you're dead to this world, but you hadn't quite entered this other world yet.
Yeah, and I need to make a correction before one of our Jewish brothers hops on here and scolds me, but it's not fence. It's one of the meanings. It has multiple meanings, life, sin, and doorway. So it's not fence. It's technically doorway, but also with life, it could be loosely translated to resurrection, which would Tyler, what you're talking about, I think.
In a way,
But
when do you remember that episode where we talked about uh Kabbalah and we talked about the different rungs to Kabbalah and where you work your way up to emanation? And I stated, um, well, I'll state it again because what I meant by foreshadowing is I truly believe that that moment when you die, that's when all things become known.
mhm.
You're not to emanation yet. You're not one with God. You're not so one with God that you don't even know you're one with God. You're not there yet. But you're not of the earth anymore either. So that's that point where all questions are answered and you are completely wise, completely understanding, completely knowledgeable of all things. Right when you die, before you enter into emanation. And I believe that right there, when you're become that third pillar, you complete that triad and symbolic that symbolism of complete understanding.
Yeah. So this is
And I think it's foreshadowing.
it must be one of my favorites, but so you have this, right, like you're talking about, card number two, and
Yep.
you have the high priestess in the center being the third column. You got Boaz and Jachin, but it's also worth pointing out that card two, Roman numerically, is that the right term? Is
Roman numeral
also
2.
is also shaped like the pillars as well, which I'm not focusing very well. But you have that pillar shape taking
Yes.
place. And it's no coincidence. Like this is no coincidence that you have the number two like it is, the pillars like they are, Boaz, Jachin, excuse me, pomegranate in the background, and you have this high priestess. And so and but here's the thing, why is it a woman? Why a woman and not the high priest? And you were talking about reaching that point, that emanation, that understanding. You as men, and this is going to sound very new agey, but as men, we we cannot, okay, you cannot be one with a dualistic God if you are not dualistic in nature yourself, right? And so what we should learn as Masons, right? Macho man, is we also have to embrace we have to
The
embrace our
sensitive.
guys.
We
No,
do. We do. And I mean, and if you don't believe it, look at the numbers. So in order to solve any equation in algebra, you have to find the opposite to zero out, right? That's ultimately what you're doing is your to get to zero, you have to have plus 32 and minus 32, and that zeroes out, that creates zero, right? Well, it's the same thing, with us. We have to, in order to truly understand life and death, we have to truly embrace the creator and the destroyer. The creator being feminine, I believe, and the destroyer being male.
which
It's
is also represented by the pillars themselves.
right.
You have the masculine and the feminine pillar.
Masculine and the feminine, and that's represented on the tree of life as well.
Yeah.
I don't have it pulled up in front of me. I should have printed out something or pulled up something on the interweb or something so I could have a little bit of reference. But that's one of the cool things about Kabbalah is the equilibrium that's created um, in
So
both pillars. Go ahead.
in this analogy that we were talking about, this I'll use this again for a visual guide. When you stand between those pillars, what do you represent?
Beauty.
Beauty, you think?
Yes. Beauty is the main separate of that pillar.
The third pillar? Oh, you're
Yeah.
talking about Kabbalistically?
Yes. Wisdom is the one on um when it comes to Jockin. Standing is the one on Boaz. Um Understanding is also strength.
Mhm.
Um and then beauty is in the middle.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you're talking about. I was just thinking because again, it's card two, right? And the second Sephiroth is wisdom, Dogma. So I just didn't know if you're going to throw that out there somewhere. But I also see where you're coming from, that being the pillar itself. So that makes a lot of sense.
That's the major attribute of that column. So it's at the very top. That's a major attribute of that column. And then on the other side, at the very top, you've got understanding. Now, at the
Mhm.
very top of the middle pillar, you've got beauty, because really Da'at is not really a Sephiroth. It's the knowledge of all things. And the crown is really um, the beginning of emanation. And so you don't, it doesn't really count the way I understand it.
But doorways are very interesting from a symbolic perspective, right? Even from like a cultural perspective. And what I mean by that, right? Like locking your doors, right? To keep bad spirits out, which really doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. From like think of like a child, right? They would lock their door to keep the vampires or the ghosts out and things like that. Things that if they were real, um, I'm not saying they are or aren't, but if they were real, would have no real issue going in, right? But even okay, from even the vampire perspective, vampires can't come into your house unless what? Do you know that lore? So a
Mm-mm.
vampire can't come into your house unless it's invited. It can't cross that doorway. So doorways have a lot of
Oh,
significance.
that's cool.
There's a certain
I
level
like that.
of I grew up watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer, so that was a
Oh
big
my
thing.
goodness. Now
But
it's not so cool.
but there's
I
a
guess
certain
that's where you tapped into your feminine side.
no, no. There you go. I watched Buffy for a different reason, but we're not
I
getting into
get it. I get it.
that. But there's a so culturally doorways have or it's like I can't remember the name of the show, but where they would put salt across the doorway to keep demons from crossing through it.
Yeah.
What was that? It was really popular. I can't remember the name of it, but
I
that's
don't
a
know the show, but I've heard of that
yeah,
lore before.
but that's a belief. And so the idea that these doorways, why? Because you can't cross if okay, let's do this. If you have a doorway and um Chet, Chet, the Hebrew symbol, represents life, sin, and like a door, right? Shaped like a door. You can't you can't you can't cross into life or out of life if you are a spiritual creature without permission, right? You can't transition without permission. And so it's likewise at certain mystery schools, you can't transition through that through that door without permission. You have to be invited.
Right.